Okay, so I've had a lot of people who've asked me about my process for creating podcasts for the Universal Design and Life and Work podcast. And I guess it all starts with Trello. I've used Trello for a little bit of time now, but it took me a while to kind of fully embrace it. But now that I have, I really enjoy it. So if you've heard about Trello and you've thought about using it or you've kind of resisted using it like me, then maybe give it a second chance because it's really helped me organize my life. So just a basic breakdown. I got my kind of list of episodes that I want to do. I got ideas for episodes that I just haven't fit into kind of the flow of each week. And then I just got a little note here from my newsletter that I'm putting out. And the recording procedure, I think, is what I want to focus on here. So it starts off with just getting a topic now. I get topics from a lot of different places, but most often it comes from kind of friends and family and colleagues, just conversations with them. Things will come up, or they'll even suggest something that might be relevant, and I just note it. So sometimes I'll throw it in Google Keep, sometimes I just add it as a task to my Google Calendar task list. Or sometimes I'll just throw it directly into Trello under episode ideas, maybe take a few notes. And then from there, I write down a script and I use a kind of pen and paper for writing my scripts. It's not a full script in the sense that I say every word on it, but it is just kind of some initial thoughts that I want to address, kind of an order of those thoughts so I know what I want to say and where I want to go with it. From there, it's about the recording. So I actually record the audio using a Blue Yeti microphone, and that plugs directly into my phone. It's got a USB-C adapter, plugs directly into my Google Pixel phone. I got an older model, Pixel 3, but it works really well. And I have on there Google's Recorder app, which automatically transcribes the podcast as I'm speaking. So it's really, really helpful because then I don't have to create a whole separate transcription either manually or with any other kind of platform. I have it right there on the phone. And then I save those audio files and the transcripts to Google Drive. The other great thing about the Google Recorder app is I'm able to save it directly to Google Drive. And yeah, that's more or less the process. I also video record, I film my podcast, so I'll throw the files from my camera onto my computer. I was using for a long time a kind of Canon kind of basic camera, but I've recently upgraded to a Panasonic video camera. Works really well. It's an older model, but it's great. And I use a shotgun mic on the camera or on the film camera, so I'm actually recording the audio in two places. I use the Blue Yeti to record the audio for the podcast, and then I use the shotgun mic. It's a Sennheiser, I think it's called, for recording connected to the camera to record the film audio, basically. Doing it in two places helps prevent me from having to pull the audio file that I record on my phone and sync it up with the video. I just have it all in one place whenever I film. It makes life a lot easier. Then it's all about kind of processing the files. I edit the audio files in the Google Recorder app. They have a really basic, simple interface. It's just really kind of tops and tails. It's cutting the beginning and the end where there's some dead air or where I might be like or mumbling or something. Then I have the podcast going out to several different platforms, including Apple Podcasts. Now, Apple Podcasts basically needs an MP3 file. So my Google Recorder app records an M4A. And so then I use Google Drive, has a kind of cloud converter built in software that enables me to convert the M4A to MP3. So yeah, do that. Then I archive my M4A files. I take the transcripts and I edit them. I kind of go through each transcript and just make sure that I have that the automatic transcription doesn't work 100%. It's like 80%. So I just make sure that it's readable. And then from the transcript, I'll pull a couple of key quotes or key ideas that I want to use in my social media push. And yeah, so then I have those two quotes kind of already there, and I draw them straight from the transcript. I use Premiere to edit the video, so I just throw the files into Premiere. Again, kind of tops and tails, cut off the beginning, cut off the end, so it's nice and it kind of just gets right into it and then ends. And I always have to fix the white balance because I don't know, I'm not good at that sort of thing when it comes to filming, so I always have to make some modifications there. And yeah, that's more or less it. I output it. I think it comes out as MP4, HD, or 4K. I can't remember which, but it's not the quality of the audio file, the resolution of the audio file to me is not or the video file is not that big a deal. Resolution of the audio file is also not that big a deal because I'm really focusing with the podcast on the quality of the messages that I'm saying and not so much on the fidelity of anything because I'm not like, I'm not a musician, so I'm not too worried about it being perfect fidelity. I just want to get the information and that knowledge across. Yes, so I think quality of production doesn't equal quality of content. So it's really important. You get up to a baseline quality of production and you'll be fine on the quality of content. So then I create some artwork. Now this is kind of an optional process, but I like to create some custom artwork for each of the podcast episodes that kind of embodies the message, the main takeaway from the episode. It's also just fun for me. It's something I can do at night when I'm just sitting watching TV or whatever. When I first started the podcast, I got all my cover art from this unsplash.com. It's a great resource for royalty-free images. And so then I just plug a keyword into that and then pick whatever interesting image comes up. But now I use Figma and I create all my artwork from scratch. Like I said, it's a lot of fun, and Figma is a really great tool because it kind of lays everything out for you, so you can kind of just tweak things and get really creative with it. But I create two separate pieces of artwork, one for the podcast episode and then one for the what I push on YouTube. So the videos all go out to YouTube, and then I do cover art for the videos. And I make sure in the cover art for the videos I include a quote, and then I conclude the same sort of imagery that's in the episode artwork. And then I pull a frame using Premiere from that podcast episode to use as a picture as kind of a background, just so you can see me and you can see that I'm the one there doing the quote. But that's worked out really well so far. It doesn't take me a ton of time. The most time I spend is usually coming up with a concept for the cover art. That takes a little bit of iteration, so I usually go through several versions of it before I can land on something that's really something that I'm comfortable with putting out there. But then it's like I said, it's iterative. So I make like 10 bad versions, and then I end up with the one version that, well, if it's not good, it's at least acceptable, and I can put it out there. But it helps me think about the work too, and it helps me kind of synthesize what I'm doing in each of the episodes. And then I just put everything up onto the platforms that I push to. So I usually take the transcript and put it out on my website and put it out also as an article on Medium. Of course, it's a transcript, so it's not like a perfectly well-written article. The narrative isn't necessarily the best because it is a transcript of the podcast episode. But it's nice because it gives the audience a different way of kind of consuming that information. And then I create a new episode in Anchor. So I use Anchor as kind of the main place where I push where I create each episode. And then Anchor actually then syndicates to all the major podcast platforms. You have to do some tweaking to get it to go to Google Podcasts and I think to Apple as well. But like Spotify and a whole bunch of others, it does on its own, which is really, really nice. And then in the Anchor description, I then link to the transcript. I link to the transcript on my website. And yeah, I schedule each episode to push around 1 a.m. I also schedule the transcripts and the Medium article to push around 1 a.m. Same thing with the YouTube. So I put the video file up on YouTube, add a short description. Basically, the description I use is the two quotes that I pull. So the two quotes that I use in my social media publications, then I use those as the description of the YouTube video and of the podcast itself. So I'm kind of reusing material that I'm already using, which makes it a lot more streamlined and a lot easier to manage. It also helps with SEO because then you have the main keywords that you're dealing with in the episode kind of right there in front. And yeah, there's not much more to say about that. Let's see here. And then this is more my production list for the day I'm going to put out a episode. So the episodes publish automatically, but then I always update my website on the video section, on the watch page, and the podcast on the listen page. I use Squarespace to host my website, which works out pretty well. I used Google to purchase the domains, which has also worked out pretty well. They both are integrated fairly simply. The Squarespace interface for setting up a website is more or less fine. I mean, if you've ever coded a website, it's a hell of a lot easier than that. And if you've ever used a kind of CMS to build a website, it's pretty basic. It took a little bit to get used to because there's just some things that I wasn't quite sure how to do. I had it in my head, but I wasn't sure how to do it in Squarespace, but I figured it out eventually. So it's a good platform. I've really have enjoyed using Squarespace. So I update my website, and then I take those two quotes and I push them out to social media. I use Hootsuite for social media. It works really well because I can then it syndicates to all the platforms. So all I got to do is basically publish one social media announcement, and it goes to LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and I think it even does others besides that, but I only use it for those four. And then so on Tuesdays, I schedule the first social media push that coincides with the publication of the podcast episode. And then I push a second publication on social media that really directs people to the YouTube channel and to the watch page on the website. And I use the cover art for the episode on Tuesday's push, and then I use the YouTube cover art on Wednesday's push. And I do the same thing on Thursday, Friday, except for on different days. And then I've begun trying to push out some kind of ask posts every week to kind of give people some opportunities to interact with the work I'm doing. So just basically, hey, check out this that I've been doing recently, or hey, maybe sign up for the newsletter or whatever it is that I'm asking people to do. And that's worked really well. And then I have this Sell My Sawdust on Sundays and Mondays. Basically, as I'm creating new content, I just kind of pick out things that I think might create value for others, and I try to push them out as well so they can see the process and they can see the ways in which I work, both in terms of the podcast, but then also in terms of my research and my teaching and all the other fun things and exciting things I get to do. So that's basically it. That's a quick rundown of my recording procedure, my production procedure, I guess you could say. I got a style guide that I've developed. Actually, one of my dear friends and colleagues, Anmer Saif, helped me develop a kind of really basic style guide. And he's not a designer, but my goodness, he really did a great job on kind of setting up this basic structure for my visual identity, I guess you could say. So it was really good to be able to work with him. He and I presented last year at a nice conference. And then the other person that I need to give credit to is my dear friend and colleague Julian Ross. I'll link his Twitter in the publication of this episode. Julian is an absolute rock star of content creation and creativity and production. He's just amazing. And so I think that I have everything I know I learned from him, I basically should say. So I hope this helps. If you have any questions, throw it in a comment. If you have any thoughts or anything that you'd like to add or suggest, yeah, just throw it in the comments. And thank you so much.